Guys, really quick announcement before today's video. If you haven't already seen, I have a dedicated Mario Kart YouTube channel now. So if you enjoy my Splatoon videos and you're really hyped for Mario Kart World like myself, please consider subscribing to that channel. It would mean a lot to me. The link is in the description. Okay, now onto the video. The Splatoon dev team does not like the Tetra Dualies. It's always been very obvious. In fact, of all the weapons in Splatoon's history, the Tetras are a candidate for the weapon that's received the least amount of changes. I mean, in Splatoon 3, they have literally never touched this weapon. Like, they never nerfed it, and they never buffed it. The main weapon is exactly the same as when the game first launched back in 2022. But even if we look back at Splatoon 2, where the Tetra Dualies were introduced, it's still barely had any modifications. It got one emergency buff very shortly after the weapon came out because the devs were scared of this thing being too powerful and they made its dodge roll ink consumption absolutely horrid when it launched. As a result of this buff, the Tetras did actually become pretty popular. This was right during the Dualie Brella Blaster meta, which by the way was the best Splatoon 2 meta, you can't convince me otherwise. So naturally, Dark Tetras really thrived alongside the Ampere Splat Dualies. Nintendo didn't like that, so in the very next patch, they dropped a pretty significant points for special nerf. Back then, they were a bit more brutal with these point for special nerfs, so they made it go from 170 to 190. Okay, now you could make the argument of why the hell was it so low to begin with, but still, come on, a 20-point nerf in a single patch is pretty harsh. Anyway, after this nerf, Tetra did still see good usage, and then towards the end of this Dualie Blaster Brella meta, they hit both the Splat Dualies and Tetra Dualies with this very random spread mode hitbox nerf. To this day, I still don't really understand why they did that. Again, this was already on the tail end of this specific meta. Both Tetras and Amperes weren't being used as much. I just remember seeing these nerfs in the patch notes and being like, huh? Now, this nerf wasn't massive or anything. The weapons were still fine, but get this. This was the last change that the Tetra Dualies ever got regarding the main weapon. Yes, version 4.4.0 of Splatoon 2, which released on January 30th of 2019, was the last time the main weapon received any sort of modification. They haven't buffed or nerfed Tetra since before COVID. That is insane. Oh, by the way, want to hear another fun fact about Tetras in Splatoon 2? Did you know that the Light Tetra Dualies were initially supposed to have Splat Bomb Rush as its special? But since Light Tetra Dualies came out during the point where the Dark Tetra Dualies were seeing a lot of use, Nintendo got scared and changed its special at the last second to Auto Bomb Rush. Which, yeah, the Auto Bomb Rush wasn't terrible on it, but I don't think anyone can deny that Splat Bomb Rush would have been much better. What's even more sad is that right after Light Tetra Dualies came out was the point that nearly the entire Dualie weapon class in Splatoon 2 just completely fell off, because that was when MPU K-Pro started being used, and I don't really want to talk anymore about that because it's just bringing up depressing memories, so let's move on. So as I mentioned earlier, Nintendo hasn't touched the main weapon of Tetra Dualies at all in Splatoon 3. It is the exact same weapon that it was 2.5 years ago. Now, yes, to be fair, they have given buffs to every aspect of both Tetra kits in this game. Both Auto Bomb and Sprinkler, as well as Reef Slider and Zipcaster, have all gotten buffs. So yes, if you want to look at it that way, then okay, sure, Tetra has been buffed before in Splatoon 3. But the point of this video is to really talk about the main weapon. So now that we've gone over the entire Tetra Dualie patch history and its lack of balance changes, I want to talk about why. Why does Nintendo never touch this weapon? Earlier, I did say that Nintendo hates the Tetra Dualies. That was kind of a joke because if they really hated it, it would actively be getting a ton of nerfs. It's more just like, they forget the weapon exists. I do have a theory as to why they never buff this weapon, and I think the reason is just that for casual players, Tetra Dualies are one of the worst weapons to go against. For someone who doesn't play this game very often, who maybe just hops on for the occasional Splatfest or Anarchy Open with friends once every few months, Tetra Dualies are disgusting. The weapon is just constantly spamming dodge rolls all over the place, and in order to kill one, you generally need to have pretty decent aim, tracking ability, and prediction predictability, which, I'm just being real, is something that a lot of inexperienced players don't have much of. I think that Nintendo knows this, so as a result, they're scared to potentially make the weapon more powerful. As Tetras are right now, you don't see them very often in competitive play. First of all, the weapon is really hard to use at a high level, and two, the weapon just hasn't been very good in any of the recent metas. But there are still a handful of dedicated players who love the weapon and try to make it work. And honestly, I think that's how Nintendo wants the weapon to be. They don't want it to be used more. They want it to be a niche weapon that only dedicated players use. And honestly, to an extent, I can understand that. Now, with that being said, I do think they could afford to give the weapon some buffs, even if they're really small. Like, it's just been so long and the weapon hasn't been a high tier meta pick in quite some time, so just give it something, man. Like, remember how I said earlier that in Splatoon 2, they gave both Tetras and Splat Dualies a spread mode hitbox nerf? Well, get this, in the most recent Splatoon 3 patch, they reverted that nerf for Splat Dualies, but didn't do the same for Tetra. Hello? What is going on? It's not like this buff is going to make Tetra super broken or anything. It rarely uses its spread mode anyways, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't also have that nerf reverted. Ugh, oh well, maybe they'll give that to us in the next patch. Some other things that they could maybe do for a Tetra buff is increase its damage to 30 per shot instead of 28, or maybe give it a slight RNG buff in either spread or turret mode. But to be honest, I really don't see either of those last two happening. I do think the hitbox nerf reversion is somewhat likely. I think they just did it with Splat Dualies first to see how it played out, and they'll do the same with both Tetra Dualies and Dualie Squelchers in the next patch. At least, I really hope so. But yeah guys, that's gonna be it for this video. What did you think? Do you think Tetra Dualies deserve a buff? Do you have a theory as to why they're not buffing it? Let me know your thoughts down below. And also remember to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.